We may all have a keychain key pass that we carry around that's hooked with our keys or whatever we need to do. It might be something we're hanging around our necks, or eventually it'll be a embedded microchip in your wrist.
No, not in my wrist. I'll keep the pass key on my keychain.
Made Daily. Hello and welcome to the Made Daily podcast. I'm John Michael Thomas.
And I'm Pierre Hegeman.
Made Daily covers our favorite online stories from tech to social media.
Our expert thoughts and opinions on information security, website design, and development.
And random stories from across the internet. This week's episode of the Made Daily podcast is made possible by Cinemechanics, the premier camera and lens rental house. When you're shooting your next film, commercial, or popular streaming platform TV series, Cinemechanics will ensure your project stays next level.
And Made Daily version 5, the all-in-one secure website builder with built-in data collection tools and secure customer portals.
And one of our way back favorites that's dead, MySpace.
Dead but not forgotten.
Dead but not forgotten. We'll get to that in a second. So today's top story, we're going to talk about this Forbes article, Old Battles, New Wars, Rediscovering Encryption's Power to Prevent Data Breaches. This is a topic we mentioned on the pod before, and it's something we are sensitive to with our company Made Daily. So let's talk about preventing data breaches with encryption. So there's data that's either sensitive or not sensitive. Not sensitive data might just be an email address, right? Or in your name. Sensitive data might go beyond your address into healthcare information, financial information, that sort of thing. So, as we've talked a lot about just working together, Pierre, one thing is encryption. Mm-hmm. Encryption is a way to, essentially lock or encapsulate your data so that people can't get into it. But it's a lot more than just a lock on a locker. So break it down for us, Pierre.
Yeah, so kind of like how this Forbes article has stated, encryption is encryption's been around since, millennia, right? If you think about the Caesar cipher, there's old, people have been writing stuff in code for as long as people have wanted to keep secrets, right? So it's not a new technology. Encryption, though, in its modern sense, is basically math, right? So what we do is we take your data, which is bits on the computer, ones and zeros, all the files, all your PDFs, your Word docs, your everything always boils down to these ones and zeros, binary formats. What the encryption will do is it takes those files and you create a key, which is, random bytes. And it will use that key, it'll run it through an algorithm, and it'll change the bits of your file in a way that it just becomes incomprehensible garbage, right? It's impossible to read. Your PDF reader won't read it anymore. It just looks like random gibberish, right? So that is what encryption means. So it's not like putting anything in a box. It's just mathematically changing your files to a way that the original programs, and if you were to open it up in a file reader, you wouldn't be able to get any useful information out of it. But it is reversible, so that if you take that same key, the original key, and apply it back to your file, you can get your original file back. And that's how we decrypt data. Now, of course, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I think that's enough for most people to be getting on with.
Mm-hmm. So it's a protection mechanism. And I guess we've always been, as people in working in tech, a little more in tune to this type of thing, but like we see a lot of organizations just think of this as just risk mitigation or something that they don't take priority to. Mm-hmm. And so the goal, though, is with encryption is to prevent data breach from happening.
Yeah, I would say that, all of information security, the whole goal of everything, security is kind of like an onion or a parfait, if you prefer. It has layers, right? So encryption is of your um, one layer of your security posture, right? So it's really an effective one. I see a lot of places, especially larger companies, just saying, okay, we have to have data encrypted, so we're going to use this appliance to encrypt the data and we're going to check the box, even if that encryption may not be adding any security to the overall posture, right? So you want to, when you're encrypting data, you want to think about it and say, does it make sense to encrypt this in this place? Is encrypting this adding protection to the data? Now, as a private individual or as a small business, you probably don't have the training to make those decisions. So in that case, there's a few guidelines that I would say
Mm-hmm.
most people should follow. One,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really easy thing to just turn on the disk encryption. So if you're on an Apple computer, it'll be File Vault. If you're on a Windows computer, it'll be BitLocker. You just turn it on, and then you're done. It'll encrypt the hard drive of your computer, and what that'll do is if your computer is lost, or you leave it you have your laptop, you leave it in a taxi. If somebody were to grab that without your password, they can't access that data. They can take the hard drive out, they can put it into another computer, but they can't read the data, right? What that doesn't do is it doesn't really protect you against like phishing or if you got malware on your computer, because once you've booted your computer and typed in your password, then the whole disk encryption unlocks everything and it's accessible to the operating system. That's how you can continue to use your computer, right? Which, we all like doing. Um, so in addition to the whole disk encryption, if you have highly sensitive data, like you were saying, maybe
Yeah.
customer data, it could be order histories, it could be, anything that if you lost it would be embarrassing, or, if your customers would be upset that you had lost that information, you probably want to protect it additionally, right? Beyond just the
Mm-hmm.
whole disk encryption. So in that case, maybe you can create an encrypted segment of your drive, or additionally put passwords on your PDFs. And every security control does often come with some level of additional work, right? So it's really hard to make good security be completely transparent, right? You're
Right.
always going to
Right.
need to put in a password, or it's getting easier with things like the pass keys and stuff,
Yeah.
because then it's just touch the hardware thing and it'll do the decryption for you.
So let me try to recap then for like just the regular everyday person who just wants to start being a little bit more mindful. You have a Mac or a PC. You can maybe turn on some vault protection
Mm-hmm.
so that your file system's encrypted. You also can just have good passwords, even on your devices. Don't put password in for your password.
Mm-hmm.
Put something in that you can, remember to get into your device, but don't use the same password that you'd use it, another thing like, don't use your bank password, stuff like that.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that a lot of people don't know is on your phone, you don't have to use the 4 or 6 digit number. You actually can, in the settings, you can go in and set an alphanumeric password on your phone, which is going to be a lot harder to guess than a 4 digit pin, right? A 4 digit pin has a very limited number of combinations, and it's possible to try them all. Now, one way to protect against that kind of brute force thing is in your settings, you can have your device wipe all data on the phone after a certain number of
Right.
failed attempts, um, which, if you're storing sensitive information on your phone, it might be a good idea. Personally, I wouldn't do that for myself because I have children and my children like to type on my phone. And if
That's
10
true.
if 10 missed passwords
Yeah.
erased my phone, I would be restoring from backup often. So
So, and another thing that people might deal with that, I mean, as we're kind of talking about encryption and just general security, is having a password safe, right? But password safes can be on a device, either your laptop or your phone. And some password safes are direct on the device, others are connected to the cloud. So it's important to, I think, to the old days, it was like, don't carry your social security around in your wallet,
Yep.
right?
Totally.
Don't carry your master like password. Don't carry that with you. And if you can't memorize it, keep it written down in a safe place, in some place where, or maybe even have a backup, and God forbid your house burned down or something. But it is definitely something that can be an inconvenience if you're out somewhere, you're on vacation, and you lost your password to something. You might not have your password safe thing. And so, what are some tips, maybe, Pierre? Are there any tips if you're not good at memorizing things and you just can't memorize your password? Like,
well, I would say if you're physically incapable of like, some people just cannot remember things like that, and in that case, then I think your best bet would actually be to have it written down and just keep it in your wallet. We're generally pretty well trained at keeping little pieces of paper safe in our wallets, right? Anybody who carries cash, if you're still doing that, you keep track of it, right?
just don't write on there what that number is for.
Think of your password as $1,000 bill, right? Just keep it as safe as you would keep that. Otherwise, I would say really just make an effort to pick a password that's memorable to you, right? It doesn't have to be 25 characters or 50 characters, right? It can be, and actually passphrases can be just as effective as complicated passwords, right? If you just put together a sentence.
So that could be something. Could that be something like, "One flew over the cuckoo's nest. My dog died in 2024."
Yeah, I mean, anything that you can remember, the longer it is, the harder it's going to be for somebody to guess and for a software to brute force, right? Because when you talk about cracking passwords, right, really what they're doing is just trying every possible combination of letters and numbers. So if your passphrase is very long, it would take a very long time for the password cracker to crack.
That always reminds me of the movie scenes where the guy's like drilling forever and they're trying to keep everybody distracted till they can get through the 17 feet of concrete or whatever they're coming through.
Now, things like the computer, as computers get more and more powerful, right, it gets easier and easier to brute force passwords, right? So there are things called rainbow tables for certain types of password hashing schemes where people have just computed every possible letter combination for that hash up to 8 or 10 characters, right? So you want to make sure that you're going beyond that, so you're not gonna, so that somebody can't just readily take the hash of the password and look it up. But
and then so we talked a little bit about the person, like a personal use, businesses, all of that, plus maybe if you're a small business, you could look at implementing protocols so that all employees are using two-factor, or having some encryption on machines that are coming and going from the office. There's levels of things that people could do, and don't store Excel spreadsheets on servers that could be accessible by your network, right?
Yeah. So for businesses, pass keys and things like smart cards, which are kind of falling out of favor these days, but can be a really good way to keep data secure via encryption, but make it still easy to access, right? So I need to access this file. I just plug in my passkey and it decrypts the file for me, right? So there's software that you can buy that will do that for you. Um, so that's would be definitely something that a business should do. I think everybody should be using two-factor, right? There's no
Yeah.
reason not to do it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of added work, right? But the security benefit is so
And the and the
great
and
that,
the
yeah.
and the best two-factor is passkey. Second, would you say would be using some sort of generator on a device where it's generating a random code?
Yeah, so those are called time-based one-time passwords. So you synchronize the seed with the server. So um, they're they're fine. Yeah, if somebody
Well,
were to be able to access your seed somehow, then they could generate the same codes as you. So they're a little bit
but
weaker
that's
in that
that's
sense.
the is that the same as the authenticator? That's the
Yeah, the
same thing. We're talking
Authenticator
about the
app.
same thing.
Now, they would have to have already accessed the backend systems of the
Yeah.
provider that you're logging into, so the chances of that are probably pretty
Yeah.
small. Or if it's happened, then your data's probably gone anyway. So, yeah,
And
so
then there's
authenticators are good.
text.
Yeah, SMS. SMS is getting harder to do now because the big telcos are um, they're really restricting who can send bulk texts. You may not see that having just come out of an election season where you probably got 100 spam texts a
Mhm.
day, but I mean, they're trying, right? Now, we'll get to this in a minute, but there may be reasons not to use SMS
Right.
two-factor as well. Then some places offer like Google, for example, will say when you try to log into Gmail, it's like, okay, open your app on your phone and touch it, and so that's fine too. But if you can, I
And
would
th-
say use a hardware one.
and then there's also sometimes using an email
Yep.
to authenticate. Um, yeah. Interestingly, like last 2 days, I got two two crazy text messages that were total spam, and one was somebody saying, "Hi, John," with a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know this person. I'm just
Mhm.
saying this because people have gotten these. Do not reply to those things. Just delete and report as junk.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure, just put the phone number into a Google search, and most of the time it will say this is a known spam number.
Yeah.
The other one was a I've got the one about like the UPS, and I got the Apple one yesterday. The one that said my Apple ID was compromised. Apple does not send you texts
Hmm.
regarding that sort of stuff. I wonder what if I might actually still have that one. Um, Apple approval notice. We have noticed that your Apple iCloud ID was recently used at the Apple Store for, for X amount of number. I'm like, I haven't used this for this.
Right.
And so, this is a kind of example of like where, you know, you don't know if
Yeah.
it's real or fake. And it's got a, URL that's support.apple.com/billing. Have a great day. Why would Apple say have a great day? So it's,
Well, I mean, they might, these
yeah,
corporations try to pretend that they're people, but you can just verify, right? When you get something like that, be it from Apple, you're only gonna get them from like the huge service providers, Amazon, Apple, Google, right? Because everybody, like the scammers are assuming that everybody has an Amazon account, right? So just check, just log in to your Apple and your iCloud and check it, right?
yeah,
Has it been used? And if it has, change your password. Simple as
yeah.
that. So a couple other things, back to the encryption a little bit. For I think for individuals and especially for companies, what you want to do is make sure you watch out for the any third party services you're using, especially things like Dropbox or Box or any of those file sharing systems, because it's really easy to if you get sensitive data into, say, your Dropbox, it's so easy to mistakenly, send a share link, or, um, you know, it's just it gets a lot harder to keep track of, because it might get synced to a different device that um, you didn't mean it to, right? So I would say be really careful with your cloud file
Hmm.
storage, and um, ideally, if you're a small business, just don't, maybe store all your sensitive client data um, on a separate hard drive, or that you've excluded from Dropbox, right? And just make sure, when you're backing up, that you back it up a different way, right? Or if you are using Dropbox for your backup, just be aware, right? I'm not saying don't do it, just be aware of it, because it is an easy way to lose your files. And then iCloud um, also has an advanced data protection that you can turn on, that will then keep your data encrypted in a way that even Apple can't access it. So if you're using iCloud backups, that's a thing that you can do. It does make recovering your data a little bit more challenging,
Hmm.
um, but it's something to think about, and it's free.
Hmm.
You can turn it on. It's just a little bit of a headache. Back to the SMS a little bit. There's been kind of an ongoing thing that we've been seeing, right, with China. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So there was this article in Politico. The headline was Chinese hack of the global telecom providers is ongoing, officials warn. So the gist is they're inside Verizon, AT&T, they're inside the networks. And there's some, I guess, thoughts, or I guess assumptions, that once they're in, they're going to be very hard to get rid of.
Oh yeah.
Once they're inside there. And so they can't really say, if they've evicted the person, was the quote. We cannot say with certainty that the adversary has been evicted.
Yeah.
They're still trying to track him down. So basically they're saying you need to use encrypted messaging if you're going to talk with people. And again, this is another thing where we used to think, oh, I might just text somebody something sensitive, a password or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody does it still. But it's probably time to stop all of those practices and pick up the phone and call the person. But you should probably now use encrypted phone
Yeah.
messaging too.
Yeah. So this is actually in the previous episode, we were talking about the Gmail hackers who were able to get in, and then they sat and waited, right? At the time, I called that advanced persistent threat,
Right.
right? When you say that, normally you're talking about state level actors, and this is exactly what that is. So when you and with advanced persistent threats, you they will gain access, and then they will go stealth, right? So it's very, very difficult to know if they still have access or not. So in this case, I would say just assume that the telcos are compromised and act accordingly. The FBI has issued an advisory saying use encrypted messaging. So we can talk about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's the other Forbes article that we're checking out. That FBI warns iPhone and Android users to stop sending texts.
SMS texts.
Yeah, old school.
Right.
Yeah. Um, I mean, you probably can sort of assume, like, if it's like you said, if it's a state actor, they're in there trying to compromise politicians, people in the government. But we're all affected now because of this too,
Right.
and nobody wants to be a victim of a identity theft at any point in time. So it's again something that we just have to be mindful of with technology.
Yeah, and I mean, we live in a world of kind of mass surveillance anyway already, right? So um, and we all think, who's gonna want to see my texts anyway, right? Like my data is not valuable to anyone, and that may be true, but it's so easy and so cheap now to just gather, harvest, and aggregate data on everyone in the world that um, you never know when those things can be put together and create something that might be harmful to you. So it doesn't hurt to use the secure communication, right? It's actually fairly simple, right? iMessage is is actually end-to-end encrypted under some circumstances, right? So the thing you want to watch out for is it if it's green, right? Then that's sending an SMS text. So that would not be encrypted, right? So look for blue and gray. Those are then somebody, if you're iPhone to iPhone, then it's encrypting it. And if you have the iCloud backup turned on, then Apple keeps a copy of your
Yeah.
key, right? So they can decrypt your messages unless you have turned on the advanced data protection that we talked about a minute ago. That would protect your messages. Android it's similar situation where if it's cross device, it's not going to be encrypted, but if it's within the Android ecosystem, they do encrypt the messages. But there's a couple other options, right? The FBI has recommended using an encrypted messenger. We use Signal at Made Daily for sensitive, messages that we need to send to each other. It can also, it's pretty good. It can do video calls, like kind of like FaceTime, right? It can, and it can be you can do encrypted phone calls
Yeah.
through that as well. So
Yeah. I
that's good.
think I would also add that I think that it's time for people to start paying attention to this stuff too, because we've had so many conversations like, do you have Signal? No, I don't have Signal. I don't want to download it. Then it's like, well, I'm not going to send you the information you need then.
Right.
So you know you got to kind of like, if somebody's not wanting to receive information from you, tell them that I'm not sending it to you. There are opportunities where just because they have bad protocols to receive your data, you don't have to follow that just because they're business and say, well, I'm not going to do business with you then if you don't want to have a secure means of collecting my information and protecting my information. And I think we have to just have this conversation more and get people into the thing that demand this. This is something you should demand, that your business, that your businesses that you're working with are protecting your data. We all go in and it's like, okay, well, you're going to get your car tires fixed and they want, what's your address? What's your phone number? You don't have to give that information to them. You can decline.
Mm-hmm.
You can protect your stuff, but a lot of it is out there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen this when you like go to put your address in to buy a product, your address just automatically pops up, right? Because all the addresses are in a database now. So it's easy to find this stuff, but it's just important to be upfront about this stuff and talk about it. The other thing I wanted to just mention too, which when you were going through some of the protocols, is another thing you could do is use services that where if you need to send somebody something, like Dropbox has like a secure send.
Mm-hmm.
You double check the email address you're sending it to. That person could get the thing, and then it will evaporate in 7 days. It'll automatically terminate, and that thing will be gone.
Mm-hmm.
That came up just recently with these BOI filings, right? They want a stupid. They require a not a stupid, but they require an ID, a proof of owners of the company. Well, not all business owners are in the same business. They're not in the same office. So people now had to like, well, how am I going to send you my a picture of my photo ID?
Mm-hmm.
Now though, with this new information from the FBI, it's like, find it and send it on Signal. Do not use regular SMS or text.
Or use your
Something.
Made Daily secure
That's
file
true. Yes,
secure portal.
that's absolutely true. So it's kind of a little bit, I feel tired talking about this. It's just like, sometimes you just want to not have the stupid phone. You just like, but I think this also just sort of, gets to the place of like, we may all have a keychain keypass that we carry around that's hooked with our keys or whatever we need to do. It might be something we're hanging around our necks, or eventually it'll be a embedded microchip in your wrist. No.
Not in my wrist. I'll keep the pass key on my keychain. That's close enough for me. Also, paper is still a good option, right? If you don't need to be able to share, say you have, say you're a therapist and you're keeping client notes. If you don't need to share that with anyone, a locked cabinet in your office is not a bad way to store those records.
Yeah, if they're not digital, it's a lot harder to breach them.
Exactly. It reduces your threat surface to people who have access to your building, right? Which is a lot less than the whole entire internet.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our way back story from the back in the day, the old 2003 MySpace. Now, Pierre, did you have a MySpace?
I did not have a MySpace. I wasn't really into social media at that time.
I did have a MySpace. It was surprisingly bad, and I don't quite remember.
Surprisingly bad, maybe.
Well, I thought it was bad because being a user experience person, I'm like, how is this even? Like, how is this bad? Like, you thought you could make something a little bit better. And I don't remember when. I'm trying to think of, like, I don't know if I have the exact dates on, but I thought what it made me think of about this one from the way back was that guy Tom who started MySpace, his picture, and he never changed his picture. And then it became an internet meme because he just kept using the same picture. And then I think he set up a different profile too.
Right, because you were making fun of my LinkedIn picture. Well, I'm not changing it now.
Well, it is a picture with you and your firstborn, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, MySpace had its heyday. I did look up and found my old band. I was in a band for a little while called The Vicious Alive, and I'll put it up. I was able to find Nothing Plays, though. That's sort of the thing. It's become its own Wayback Machine. But like, yeah, here's our. I know there was pictures on here, and there's some songs, and but nothing actually plays. And the reason that is, I think, is because I was looking on the history of the company, and it looks like in 2019, it lost all of content before 2016 in a faulty server migration, which is just also seems like, how is this possible? So it's as of October 5th, 2024, this is from Wikipedia. MySpace has still been placed in a read-only mode of sorts, as no new articles have been published since 2022. So it's effectively dead, and it looks like, I mean, I don't know I didn't check the stats.
Since 2023, I'm surprised that people were still posting.
Well, it had a little bit of a resurgence. They did kind of redo it, and they were using it, but like back in the day, it was like people were making little careers as like MySpace page developers, because you had to go in and basically hack these things to make them look like something. But yeah, that's funny. And
GeoCities. I think that's even further back. Well, MySpace, they made it because once you're in a Weird Al song, you know that you're just part of the zeitgeist. Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for joining us today. If you want to check out any of the stories or topics we covered, head over to maydaily.com/blog. And if you have a story you'd like to share or a website you'd like reviewed, leave us a comment, or if you'd like to come on the pod and talk to us and tell us don't know what we're talking about, we're here to debate that with you too. So
yeah, that'd be fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And don't forget to subscribe.
Until next time.
Click the thing at the bottom. Click it.
Do it. And stay secure. made dating